Hello, partners. Once again, my name is Abel. I hope you guys can see my screen now. Okay. So let's get started. So before we start, I want to thank you all for joining us today for day 2 of the Creator and Deluge training. So today we've got a good lineup of both Creator and Deluge. So yeah, and before we do that, let me just announce yesterday's winners. So yesterday's winners were for the hashtag Soho Inspire contest, where Vishal, Sudhakar, and Eng. So all of them have won goodies from Soho. So to win goodies, tweet out with Soho Inspire on LinkedIn and Twitter, and lucky winners would be getting $50 worth partner. So yeah, so let's get started. So today I would be talking about advanced Deluge features. So these are features that you would come across often while scripting using Deluge. So I'll be covering 4 main topics today. One would be the collections, iterators, built-in functions, and the send mail task. So yeah, let's get started with collections. So up until now, we've seen data types which can store one value at a time. And for those familiar with lists and maps, you can store multiple values in a variable. So since lists and maps had, since the features for lists and maps were quite similar, we have consolidated that and brought in a new data type called collections. So a collection data type can be considered as a list or as a map, and yeah, and there are two types of collections depending upon the way the data is stored and retrieved. So one is the index value collection, and then other is the key value collection. So an index value collection is quite similar to a list for those of you who know what a list is. So each element in an collection, each element in an index value collection is stored in an ordered manner, and each element can be accessed to using the indexes. So the first element of an index value collection is always 0. So the last element is always n-1 for a list or collection of size n. So here's an example of a collection with the different indexes. So here we have the indexes 0, 1, and 2, and the different values are creator, books, and CRM. So now let's check out how a key value collection works. So a key value collection is a data type where we refer to each element using a key, and each key inside a key value collection is unique. And the key and values can be of any data type. So we have, so here's a collection where we have a key and value pair. So the different keys are name, version, and plan. The different values are creator, 5, and ultimate. So now let's see how we can create a collection. So to create a collection, you have to first initialize a collection. So there's 2 ways of doing that. So one way would be to create an empty collection, and another way would be to create a collection on the go. So to create an empty collection, you say collection variable equals collection, and that would create an empty collection. And to create a collection with the values, you could specify collection variable equals collection, and then in the arguments you could pass the different values. So here's an example of how to create an index value collection and a key value collection. So here we are creating a collection of all the different products. So the collection name is product names, and different collections are creator and books. So for the key value collection, it's quite similar. So you declare the collection name equals collection, and then you specify the different values. So here the names creator and the version is 5. So as you can see, the separator that you use to differentiate the key and the value would be the colon symbol, and each pair is known as an element and is separated using commas. So now that we know how to create a collection, now let's check out how we can perform different operations on a collection. So the basic operations that you can perform on any data type would be your CRUD operations or your create, read, update, and delete operations. So let's talk about the create operation or the insert function. So this is a built-in function which can be used for inserting values into a collection. So the syntax for that is your collection variable dot insert and the different values. So here's an example where I show you how to create an index value collection and a key value collection. So for an index value collection, you say the collection name dot insert and then the different values to be inserted. So this would insert to the existing product names. It would insert CRM along with sales IQ. So for a key value collection, here it's quite similar. Here we use the collection name dot insert, and then you have the different key value pairs. So we've added a new key called plan, which has a value ultimate, and a new key called plan type, which has a value yearly. So now let's see how we can retrieve data from a collection. So to retrieve data, we can use the get function. So the get function accepts either an index or a key, and it would depend upon the type of collection that you have. So the syntax is value equals collection variable dot get, and then you have the different index value, index or the key. So here's an example where we show you how to create an index value collection. So we have product name equals product names, which is the collection name dot get, and I've specified 0 here, so that would retrieve the first element from the collection. And next is an example for a key value collection. So you have product name equals product details dot get, and I've specified the key name, which is name. So now we've seen how we can get records. Let's see how we can update records from a collection. So to update values in a collection, you use the update function. So here also we have, it accepts 2 arguments. One would be the key or the index, and the other would be the value. So the syntax is collection variable dot update, and then you have index or the key, and then the value to be updated to. Here's an example where we show you how to create an index value collection and a key value collection. So for an index value collection, you have product names dot update, and then you specify the index of the record to be updated. So to update the first record, we would mention it as 0 as the index, and then the new value to be updated, which would be invoice. So for a key value collection, we would be using the collection name dot update, and then you have the key name followed by the actual value. So this would update the plan from the earlier example where we had set it to ultimate, and now it would become free. Now let's see how we can perform the delete function, delete data from a collection. So here we make use of the delete function, and here we make use of the actual value and not the index or the key. So the syntax is collection variable dot update and then the value. So for an index value collection, you could specify it as the collection name dot delete, and then you could specify the actual value to be deleted, which would be, if I want to delete the invoice or value invoice, I would specify invoice there. And for a key value collection, I could specify the actual value, and that could be the actual value is free here. So now that we've checked out how the different functions work, so let's try out a demo where I show you all the things that we've learned so far. So a good place to start would be to make use of the Deluge editor. So you can access the Deluge editor using um, using the web browser, accessing deluge.zoho.com/tryout. So this is an interactive editor which gives you a drag and drop interface and a command line interface. So to create a collection, you can just drag and drop maybe the create collection option. I'll just zoom in a bit so that you can easily understand. So let me create an index value collection. So I'll just name it as product names. Okay, I'll just mention here that it's an index value collection using the comments. So to add values to that, we can just add the actual values here itself. So let me add two values, CRM, and let me add creator. So let me use the debug statement info to show you the collection. And to execute this, you can use the shortcut command and E. So here in the console, we have CRM and creator as the elements from the collection. So now let's try to use the insert function here. So you have product names dot insert, and then let me add and click here, and let me do an info to show you the values updated. So as you can see, the size of the collection is updated to 3, and there are 3 elements. Now let's check out the get function. So you can use the, let me just reuse the UI itself, dot get, and let me retrieve the first element from the collection. So I use 0 here, and that would give me CRM. Okay. Now let me show you the update function. So since it's an index value collection, I have to specify the index. So let me try to update the first element from CRM to maybe sales IQ. And let me print out the product names collection. So as you can see, the value CRM has been updated with sales IQ. Let me show you the delete function. So you have product names dot delete, and then you specify the value. So let me get rid of, click here, and let me print out the collection. So as you can see, click is removed from the collection. So now that we've seen functions related to how the index value collection works, let's see how we can implement the same thing for a key value collection. So let me just comment this so I can use the multi-line comment, so which would be option command and the /. So anything enclosed inside /* star and star / would be commented, and the script wouldn't be executed. Now let's talk about a key value collection. So let me create a collection once again. So I'll create a collection called product details. And to add values, I can add it directly here. So I'll just add in name followed with the value creator. And let me add another key value pair as version, and then 5. Let me do an info for this. So as you can see, this is the collection which contains the key value pairs, name and version. Now let's see how we can use the insert function. So you have product details dot insert, and then let me add a new plan detail. And let me show you how the collection is updated. Okay, I have a typo there. Yeah, okay. So you can see that the collection is updated with the value for plan as ultimate. Now let's see how we can get values. So I'll just use the get function here. Get, and let's get the plan details. So there you have ultimate as the plan. Next, let's see how we can do an update on product details. So let's use the update function. Update, and let's update the plan from ultimate to free. So as you can see, the separator that we use here is the comma and not the colon. So we can see the updated collection, so which has plan as free. Now let me show you how we can do a delete operation. So we use the delete function, and let me delete the free plan. So I'll print out the product details, and as you can see, both the key and the value has been removed from the collection. So that brings us to the end of the demo here. So let's switch back to the presentation. Yeah, now let's talk about iteration in Deluge. So iteration is a way for us to run a piece of code repeatedly as long as the condition is satisfied. So in Deluge, we can run an iteration based on a list or a collection. And here the condition that should be satisfied is the size of the list or collection. So the loop would run based on the size of the collection. So there are different types of loops in Deluge. So we have two. So we have the for each index loop and the for each element loop. So let's talk about the for each index loop here. So the for each index loop is a loop which provides us with the index every time for every iteration of the loop. So the syntax for that would be for each index, and then you have the variable which would contain the index and use the in criteria, and you have the collection name, and inside curly braces you could have your code to be executed. and the index always starts at 0. So let's see an example for this. So for the collection product names, we have two elements, which is creator and CRM. So now if you use the for each index loop, so here we have the index variable as I and the collection name as product names. So this loop would run twice, and for each iteration we would be getting the value for I would be appended with 1. So here we are trying to get the different products, and we would check whether the product matches CRM or not. And if CRM is matching, we would be printing out CRM is available. So now let's check out how the for each element loop works. So the for each element loop is quite similar to the for each index loop, but unlike the index, we would be getting the actual element here. So the syntax here is for each, and you have a variable which would store the element in, and you specify the collection name. And then you have the script to be executed inside curly braces. So here's an example for the for each element loop. So you have for each the element name, which I have used it as product name in product names, and we check whether the product name is equal to CRM or not. So if you remember the previous example where we used to use the get function to get the element from the collection, here you can see that we can directly use product name because it contains the actual element. So let's see a quick demo for this. So I'll just comment out the script as well. So I'll use the multi-line comment, and let me create a for each index loop. So before we create a loop, let's create a collection. So I'll just drag and drop this here. And I'll add in different products. So I have three values. We use the for each index loop. I in So now let's see how we can use this. So I'll just create a variable called product name, and that would contain each individual product. And then I check whether the product name matches CRM or not. So I'll just print out the text to be printed if it matches. So let's try this out. So as you can see, since the collection and since the value CRM is there, this would be printed. The text is printed. So that is a for each index loop. Now let's see how we can create a for each element loop. So I'll just copy this here, copy the collection definition, and I'll make use the for each element loop. So I can specify the element name as product name and the collection. So here I can directly use if product name equals CRM, and then I can directly check whether it's there. So this would print out CRM is available if the value CRM is there in the collection. So as you can see, since the value is there, it has been printed. So this brings us to an end to the iterations. Now let's get back to the presentation where we discuss about the built-in functions in Deluge. So built-in functions are predefined functions inside Deluge. So these are functions that we would be often using because it makes it much more simpler. So the built-in functions can be categorized based on the data type on which it runs or based on the return values. So let's talk about text-based functions. So text-based functions are predefined functions which work on the text data type. So we have a few of them. I'll be discussing three of them here. So here we have the contains function, concatenation function, and the replace all function. So the contains function is used to check whether a particular value exists in a string or not. And if the value is present, we would be getting true or false or a Boolean value. So the concatenation function or the concat function is to append two strings together. So it would give us a third string which is a combination of both the first and the second string. So the syntax for that is variable name equals text1.concat, and then you have text2. So next, let's talk about the replace all function. So the replace all function is used to search and replace text, and also we also support matching regular expressions. So the syntax for that is variable name equals string dot replace all, and the search string followed by the replacement string, and then you have a Boolean value which is the third parameter. So by default it is true, which would mean that we would be escaping special characters or regular expressions. So if you change that to false, so the search string would match regular expressions. Now let's talk about the number functions. So the number functions are used on the number data type. So we'll be discussing about main, sqrt, and the round function. So the min function is used to find the minimum number two data type between two number fields. So the syntax for that is variable equals number one or the first number dot min, and you provide the second number as the argument, and that would give us the smallest number between these two numbers. The sqrt function or the square root function would provide us with the square root of a number, and the round function is used on decimal numbers to set the precision for the number. So let me just show you an example for the number functions. So let's go back to the editor. So I'll just comment this out again. So we'll declare two variables which have number values. So I'll just put it as num1 100 and as 200, and then we'll use the min function here. So this would return the smallest number between number 1 and number 2. So that would give us 100 here. Now let's check the sqrt function. So let's use the sqrt function on num1. So that would give us 10.0. Now let me create a number which has decimal places. So I'll just create a number like 23.45 and save that to num3. So let me put in a few more places. So to round this to two places, I could use num3 dot round, and I can specify like two places, and that would give me 23.57. So let's get back to the presentation and let's talk about datetime functions. So the datetime functions are functions that work on the datetime data type. So we'll be talking about 3 of them here today. So the years between, as it suggests, would give us the number of years between two datetime fields. And the syntax for that would be variable name equals, you have your datetime start date dot years between and then your end date. So, and next let's talk about sub minutes. So the sub minutes is used to subtract minutes from a datetime field. So you have variable, and so the syntax for that is variable equals the datetime value dot sub minutes, and then you can specify the minutes to be subtracted. Next is the add hour. So the add hour would add hours to a datetime field, and the syntax for that is variable name equals datetime value dot add, and then you specify the number of hours to be added. So now let's talk about the collection based functions. So we've already discussed about a few of the collection based functions, which were insert, delete, update, and the get function. So we have quite a lot of them here. So we'll be talking about 3 of them in this presentation. So one would be the contains value. So you remember the example where we were running a loop to check whether the value CRM was present. So this is a whole lot easier. So there's just one statement which would check whether the actual value is present inside the collection or not. So instead of running all that loops, you can just use this one line of code. So you have variable equals collection variable dot contains value and then the value to search for. Next we have the sort function. So the sort function is used to sort the data based on the value. So based on the parameter that you pass for the sort function, it would sort it based on ascending or descending. And next we have the isEmpty function. So the isEmpty function is used to check whether a collection is empty or not. And actually the isEmpty function can be used for different data types as well. So yesterday in one of the questions we had, one of our partners had asked how would we debug, whether we would be covering how to debug code and all. So most of the time what we've noticed is mostly from an API or from an integration task, the values at sometimes can become empty. So that could be due to various reasons. And one of the reasons could be like at that particular time, maybe that record was missing, or let's say, or maybe that there was some issue with the API server, and because of that, the API failed. So one easy way to always check would be to check whether the response is empty or not. So you could always use the isEmpty function before you perform any actions on it. And so this can actually act as a fail-safe mechanism. So in case the API fails for some reason, you can always check whether the response is empty, and based on that, you can have scripts accordingly. So let me just show you an example for the collection-based functions. Let's go back to the editor. And let me create a collection once again. I'll create a collection called product names. And I'll add in 2 values. I'll create an index value collection. So let's first try out the contains value function. So you have product value name dot. I'll just change it to names. So you have contains value, and then I can search for CRM, and this would give me a Boolean value saying that CRM is present. So you have true here. That's an easy way to check. So instead of running 4 or 5 statements, this one line would give you the same result. Now let's try out how we can use the sort function. So we'll use product names dot sort, and that would by default it'll sort in ascending. So let's sort it in ascending. And now let's check the isempty function. So I'll use product names dot isempty. Since our collection is not empty, it would return false here. Okay, now let's go back to the presentation. So next we'll be talking about XML based functions. So we have so these are functions that work on the XML or JSON responses that you get from an API. So these can be used for parsing the data from an XML or a JSON. So we use the execute XPath function. The syntax for that is your variable name equals your XML or JSON string dot execute XPath, and then the actual path to be parsed. So let me show you an example for this. So let me just I'll just comment this out, and let me create an XML string. So an XML string is a string which has parent and child tags, and then you have nodes inside that. So I'll be creating an XML string called employee, which has a child node called a name. So each node would have a close tag, and that would be with the /. So inside this, I'll have another node called name, and inside this, the name would be Matthew. So in order to get Matthew, we can use the execute XPath function. And here I can specify the path. So the path would be employee, and then under employee, I would have to get the name, and then followed by the actual value. So I can use the text function, and that would give me Matthew. So that would give me Matthew. Yeah. So let's get back to the presentation. Next, let's talk about encryption functions. So these are functions that are used to idly when you use an API call. So since you're passing data over the internet, you want your data to be secure, and you want to preserve the integrity of your data. So when I send hi, I want the receiver to receive it as hi and not hello. So one easy way to do that would be to encrypt the data while sending it. So different APIs require different API standards, and we support quite a few of them. So we'll be talking about 3 of them here. So the URL encode function is used to encode special characters which are used inside a URL, and so these special characters could be your ampersand or could be your space characters, and you could use and the syntax for that is variable name dot variable equals Zoho encryption dot URL encode, and the string to be encoded. So next we have the URL decode function. So this would decode the encoded value. So the syntax is quite similar. So variable name equals Zoho dot encryption dot URL. Sorry, that has to be decoded, and then you have the value to be decoded. Next we have the AES encode function. So AES stands for Advanced Encryption Standard, which is a universally accepted encryption standard. So it's a symmetric encryption standard which uses the same key for encrypting data and for decrypting data. So the syntax for that is variable name equals Zoho.encryption.AES encode, and then you can pass the encryption key along with the value. So that could give us a string in AES encoded format. So That brings us to the end of the built-in functions. So a quick way to learn about built-in functions would be to access deluge.soho.com/help. So let me open that for you here. So as you can see here, this is the deluge.soho.com/help page. So here we list out 160 functions here with based on different data types, and you can try out each one of them. So by clicking on them, so here on the left side you have a small description about the function, and on the right side you have a tryout editor. So you can just try out the scripts. So here we are checking out the starts with function. So starts with function is used to check whether a particular string starts with a particular substring. So here we are checking whether the product name Zoho Creator dot starts with Zoho. So here in this case, it is true. So and we do have functions based on collections and numbers and date time fields. Yeah, go through this when you have more time. So now let's talk about let's talk about the send mail task in Zoho Deluge. So the send mail task is used for sending out email notifications to your customers and your users. So and the send mail task supports sending files as attachments using the task. So the basic syntax for the send mail task is you have send mail task, send mail, and then inside your square brackets you have the from and to email address, which would be mandatory. The from email address has to be so.admin user ID or so.login user ID, or it can even be a verified email address. And the BCC, CC, and the reply to are all optional. Next, we have the subject and message. In Deluge, we support sending HTML messages as well. So if you're sending out an HTML content, you have to specify the content type as HTML. Otherwise, you can by default it would be plain text. And then we have an option for sending out attachments. So that brings us to the end of the session today. I hope you guys have been able to follow through, and please feel free to ask any questions related to the sessions. So I'll just share the help doc links here, and I think, yeah, Hemant, I'm done.
Okay, Bruno. I'll take it over and I'll hand it over to Padma. Yeah. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, thank you.
So hi all. In this session, we'll be seeing, or I'll be walking you through how to achieve basic database-based data functionalities, like what you do with the normal SQL queries to fetch the data, to add the data, to update, delete, and to perform some aggregate functions based on the data that has been forms. So and now we'll see what are the capabilities of Creator and how it is going to, how we can use the Deluge, and what are the syntaxes to be used to fetch, the add, delete, and update the data. Yeah, I hope the voice is audible and you're able to see my screen. Thank you. So we'll be seeing about the data access capabilities in Creator, where as I dealing with the basic SQL based queries on the relational, what you do with the relational databases. So to show this, I will directly take you to the application. And first, let us talk about how do we perform insert options. So I'm just using a custom for you how to get the syntax of insert. So there are, if you look into scripting, script builders, you will be having a help. Like you can just drag and drop to get to know the syntax of how the data can be inserted or how you can manipulate with the data. So first, let us fetch records using Deluge. So for which we have the syntax like the variable equals, you need to give the form name. So let's give it, it's a collection variable. As you all know, you've learned about the collection. So here it will be a collection of records that we receive from particular table or the form that we are trying to fetch data from. Say, for example, I have a product form. So on click of this, you will see the list of forms that we already have in our application. So I'm just choosing the product form, and this is the place where you need to specify the criteria. And as of now, I wanted to just fetch all the data that is available in this particular form. So I just say ID not equal to 0. So the reason why I say ID not equal to 0 is as you submit the data in Creator, what the Creator does is it creates a unique identification number or the record ID, which is a big integer, big int, which is of 18 digit, and it associates, it creates every record that is submitted, the data that is submitted. So there won't be any record which as such will not be having this ID. So when I say a criteria ID not equal to 0 means I wanted all the records that is available in that form. So this is the way we first fetch the collection. Now I need to iterate through. I need to know what is the list that is available that has been fetched. So for which we use the for each iteration, which you already learned. So here we'll be using the for each record iteration. So the syntax for it is, you can see 3 syntaxes. We are going to go for the for each record, which directly deals with the data that we are fetching from a form. So for each, it will be the variable. And from the form, either you can give a form or we can use the collection variable, that a collection which we have already collected the data with. So we can iterate using this collection. And now we will try to print and see what records are there, how many records are there, and what are all the records available in the product form. So this being a collection, it will actually have the list of the record IDs that has been generated by the creator. But actually what we want to see is the value. So to see the value, you just need to go and fetch at the field level, the attribute level. So let's say we want to fetch the product name, and we also want to see the selling price of the product. So what this will do is, it will basically at the back end, it will fetch the records in ascending by default, because I have not given any instruction that I wanted it to be sorted in descending order. If you don't specify the sort by, there is a syntax which I will be telling you. If I don't specify any other syntax other than just saying the form name and the criteria, by default, it will only take the set of records sorted in ascending order. If I wanted the records to be sorted in descending order, I need to specify. So we'll see that next. Let's first see what value has been printed here. So when I execute this, you can see the list of products available in the application. The first one is the product name and the second one is the selling price. So the order in which you're seeing is in the ascending order. Say, for example, if I want this in a descending order, then I have a syntax called sort by added time. And added time, all the user modified time, these are all the default columns that will be created, that will come along with every form creation. Because the moment you add a record, the time will get recorded and set in the added time. You modify a record, that will get set in the modified time. So we can make use of the added time in order to fetch the latest to the oldest. So I just say the instruction that sort by added time in descending order, DESE. That's all. So once I say this, the order in which you will be seeing the records would be the other way. You remember we saw it, the product 1 was at the top and product 23 was at the bottom. So by default, it is ascending, and you can enforce it to descending by specifying it in the syntax. So this way you can actually fetch the records in the order which you require. Okay, now that you have say 1,000 records, and I want to perform the function or fetch the records only part by part and perform some business logic on it, to do some logic, analyze the data by taking it part by part. I don't want all thousands in one go. I would like to fetch only 250 first, then next 250, then next 250, and goes on for 4 times. So how do I do that? So for which we have an option or the syntax called range from the index. So basically what you do is, whenever you try to fetch a record from a form, you get the data in a collection, and that will all have the indexing starting from 0. The 0th index to the latest. How much ever records you have, that will be the index value. That is how it is set. So here, if you want to fetch, say, first 10 records, or say first 5, because we have minimum number of records, the best way to think about is, say I want first 5 records. So I will have to start from 0 to the end value, say 4. So I'll have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4, and I'll have 5 values. So now we will see whether we get only that 5 records and not all the records that are available in the product table. Okay. Execute it. Okay, so 0, it starts with 0 and ends with 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 6 records that has been fetched, but we do have more records in this table. Suppose we specify a range which is not available, then this loop won't get executed at all. Okay, so this is the total the syntax. Understand what all is possible when you are fetching a record. You can do sorting, and you can fetch the records by range. So these are the 2 things that comes along with the fetch statement. Okay, so next is the same thing. You can execute the same thing. Instead of taking it into a collection variable, you can as well do this process straight here. You don't need to put it in a collection variable, take the collection variable, and then deal with it, because it is the same thing. Whatever in this case is what will happen now also. So if you just try to execute it, you will see the same performance. So there is no difference in that. Okay, but number of times of execution, first it fetches, and then it uses the collections in each and every record alone with this. That's all. So this is to do with how do you from forms. Then the next SQL part that we're going to see is how do we add records into forms. So for which we either you drag to the position so that you get the syntax straight away. So this is how. So actually this will be a ease for you. It will help you to fill in the data, and when you say insert, the data gets into the system straight away. Say for example, I want to add a product, okay, and the stock value 1,000, and I'm just filling only the mandatory fields. The product, it is a string. So when you have to specify a string, you can do it this way. Click on this in order to enter the value. 0, 0, 2, 4. Then want to choose the product group. This product group is actually a begin. So it is a lookup. So to set up a lookup, you need to actually enter the integer value. So whenever you have lookup, you just take the format and you can actually straight away get into the coding part. See, for example, you have some lookup fields here. You want to set it up. So there, what you need to do, the variable, this will be the record ID that the particular insert statement returns, because we have already know that every time you submit a data into the system, the creator generates a unique identification ID or the record ID. So that value will be returned by the insert statement here. So here I choose the product. So once I choose the form, you can see all the mandatory fields getting displayed. Okay, and now you can enter the description. That is, you can enter the values here. So for the product group, what I can do is product group is a lookup field. So I need to fetch the corresponding lookup value. So for which I create a collection for the product group. So you have the product group. Let me get into that. Yep, you have a table add product group. So you have add product group, and I'm trying to fetch a value. Could be wanted, or specifically if you are you are aware of the particular product group that you wanted to, you can actually do the query based on that. That is, it has a field called product group string, and you can say this value equal to the values that I have in the product group. Look at it. So you have two things called beverages and kitchen appliances. Say, for example, let's choose beverages. So I'm going to set the string as a criteria. Yeah. So this will actually return record ID corresponding to this particular group called beverages, and I'll be using this ID straight away into the expression, because this is this is the ID value which I'm going to. So this is a lookup field in the particular application. So all lookup field, the values that you're trying to insert have to be the record ID that is generated for that collection. Okay, here product group itself is a form, and it has each and every record has got its own ID, and we are actually creating we have created a relationship between the product and the product group form, and the product group is one of the lookup fields in the product form. So I have to insert the ID of the product group. So now let me give it a name, say product 25, say the selling price is 5,000. Product code is 0025, and unit of measurement. Again, this unit of measurement is I think it's not a, yeah, it is not a collection, so it has to be hard coded directly. Then say the stock availability 100 and the reorder level is 100, and for these fields which says field is expression, they will be the fields which are not mandatory. If you feel like you want to enter those values too, you do it. Okay, but let us just stick on to what we have here. So we are going to insert a product into a product table, a product form, and we have set the respective product IDs. Now let's execute it. So let's actually comment this so that you don't have unwanted execution happening. Yeah. Okay, now we'll go and check if this data has been executed or it has inserted the record into the products. Sorry. See, we just inserted product 25 with the product group is, can just go edit and see, because the beverages ID has been set. So we actually have taken the ID of the product group. This is a lookup field. Okay, so that's the reason whenever you query, you have to be aware of which are all. So if there is a lookup field, then you will have to insert only the record ID of that particular form, which look up in that form in which you want to enter the data. Okay, so this is the way how the insert works. So this is how you add records into the respective forms. So the next thing is we will see how to modify the record. So to modify the record, first thing you need to get hold of the collection, because you need to know which record you want to modify. As you saw in the previous session on how you modify a record, update a particular value using its index, right? Here we are going to use the reference, that is unique reference as record ID, based on which we will take the reference of that record ID and then set we'll have to see which field value you want to update, and we have to assign the value to the respective fields. Say, for example, let us take the same example, and what I'm going to do is say, I'm just going to try executing this again, okay, just by changing. Okay, so that is the way I'm trying to do it. So first it will do an insert. I'll get hold of the record ID, then I will update that in the same record with a different name for the product. So while insert, the product will go as P0025. Now I will change, sorry, the product name is product 5. I'll be changing the name. Okay, so now you have the record ID in your hand. So what you need to do is you need to fetch product and ID which matches with record ID. So the criteria here is it has to match the record that I just inserted. Okay, record ID, and so this will be my reference. So now I'm going to update the field product name. So I'm going to update the field product name equal to, say, I'll make it as product hyphen. Okay, so this is how the insert works. So whenever you want to insert a record into a particular form, hold of the respective record based on its ID, and then use the field to assign the appropriate value. Okay, let's check. Now that we don't have this number 25 in the list, okay, which comes under the beverages category. So we're going to execute this. Okay, go and see. So you can see that while getting inserted, it would have got inserted as prod 25, which was the first insert statement that we had written. And then we had executed the update statement where it has taken the reference of the record ID, which is returned by the insert statement. And I took that as a reference and updated the product name field. Now you get an idea about how to then let's do a delete. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I will manually delete it and see if my function is doing the job of deleting it. That's all. So now I have the product ID reference in my hand. So the command for delete is delete from which form? Order at product form, and the condition is ID equals record ID. So here there are going to be 3 operations on the same record. First, it will create a record, then modify the record, and then it will delete the record. Okay. So let's execute this. So once you execute this, you should not be able to see any record there at all. Previously, we with modification. Now there won't be any record. Got it? So this way you can see how the delete works. So whenever you are writing a delete syntax, please take care that you specify the right criteria to delete the appropriate records. Okay, so this is to do with how you fetch records based on, or how you fetch records by sorting it, then fetching it in ranges, you insert a record, then how do you modify the record and also delete a record. So these are the data access operations that are possible in Creator. So this is a simple example which I have shown to get hold of the structure or the syntax by which you can execute it using Deluge script. Okay, so this is about working with the data within your application, or within your Creator. Now let's think about how do we deal data that is to be either inserted into a different application. It could be either a third-party application, or it could be another Zoho product itself. So here it is just a stepping stone into the integration, a built-in integration, which we're going to see, where we'll be dealing with some of the Zoho products which is directly integrated. We can use the Deluge task or the built-in integration tasks which will make the developers easy to construct a built-in integration between two products, the Creator and other Zoho products, or the Creator and few of the third-party applications which are already configured with the Creator. So I will just walk you through the presentation of it to just show you what it look like. Hi, I think the audio is breaking a bit, so I will just refresh once and I will get started with the built-in. Okay. Yeah. So now you're able to see my screen and you're able to hear my voice. Is it clear? Or is there any breaks, or do I need to slow down further in my pace? Okay, thank you. So now let's get back to the presentation part. Okay, now here we will be seeing how to integrate Zoho Creator with other Zoho products using simple built-in integrations, which we call as Deluge tasks. So what happens is you can actually use the Deluge tasks to integrate with other Zoho products like CRM, books, inventory, sign, analytics, and you have even more products in the list. And there is no enough space here. That's the reason why I just put dots here. Apart from the Zoho products, we also have few of the external services that can be integrated to in an easy way using Deluge task. So few of those are the Salesforce, QuickBooks, and Google Apps. So here today, I will be actually showing you a use case where I will be integrating Creator with Zoho Sign as one of the built-in integrations between the Zoho products. And another example would be to integrate Creator with QuickBooks as a built-in, as using a built-in Deluge task. How do I execute that? How do I achieve that to push the data or to read the data from QuickBooks? Okay, so how the syntax will look like. So what is the basic syntax in order to achieve this is what we're going to see. So the syntax basically would look like you will have a collection variable as a return value. The response will be a collection variable. It will either be a map or the map containing a list or the list containing a map. So it could be any type of collection that is returned as a response by the other application to which we are trying to integrate. Okay, so the syntax would be Zoho dot for Zoho products. In order to integrate with other Zoho products, the syntax would be Zoho dot service dot action. Here the service is the sign, the CRM, inventory, then the analytics. So all the other products, right? Those are all the services. And action. So what action means here is whether you want to fetch record, whether you want to create a record, whether you want to update a record, or whether you want to delete a record, or you want to search for a record. So these are the possible actions that can be performed over the services that you choose, and for which you will have the relevant parameters passed. So depending upon the kind of operation that you're trying to, action that you're trying to perform, you will need to pass the parameters. And this parameter will again be a collection. So that collection mostly will be maps. Okay, so which you would have seen in most of your integration part. Okay, and when I say other services, how do you actually perform other service integration? So for other services, you have a specific format. For QuickBooks, I'll be showing you the format. So there again, for QuickBooks, you will have Intuit.QuickBooks, that is the service, dot action, whether you want to get record, whether you want to create, update, or delete. Again, you will have the respective parameters. All these, when you're passing the parameters, we need to form the map data in such a way that the keys that are created in the map data should be followed as per the API documentation. When you actually have to pass the value, you need to refer to the API documentation of the respective application. For example, if I have to say create record in QuickBooks, I need to use the API documentation of the QuickBooks to understand what are all the mandatory attributes that I need to pass in order to create a record in a particular module. So the syntax will actually say which module you want to actually perform the operation on, and if that particular application has got some IDs, organization ID or company ID, it is necessary to pass that. Then we might also need to pass the connection object that can be configured from Creator. Okay, so I'll be showing you both the ways. One, without using connection object, when you have to build in, when you have to create or build an integration between Zoho Creator and other Zoho products, where you log into both the applications with the same credentials. Okay, there you need not have this connection object. Rather, the Deluge task straight away will help you achieve that. From backend, it is handled. But when it comes to the third-party applications like QuickBooks, you need to establish the connection from the account level, the creator account level, and use that connection string as the reference inside the action as one of the parameters. So I'll be showing you two use cases. One, the integration within Zoho product, and the other one, integration with a third-party application. Right? Now let's get into the application straight away. So what I'm actually going to show is, first use case would be most commonly used use cases when people have to travel abroad. Say I have employees traveling from India. When they have to come to Europe, they need to actually apply for Schengen visa. To apply for a Schengen visa, they need an invite letter that has to be attested by the region head of the the country where they are, one of the Schengen countries where they are trying to travel. Say, for example, we have an office in Netherlands, and when people from India have to travel to Netherlands or to any Schengen countries, they'll have first come to Netherlands, for which they need a visa. So to get this visa process, they need an invite letter from this office. So here I'll be showing you one use case where the employee generates this letter, just creates this letter and sends it to the Europe head, and that person has to attest it. So here it is not like you compose a mail and then you send it. Here it is all straight from the creator application. So we have an application where user enters all the information that is required as far as the visa process is necessary, and there will be a record template from behind which will generate the letter format using all the data that has been entered by the employee, and that letter will be uploaded to Zoho Sign. So here I'm going to integrate Creator with Zoho Sign. So what happens is this document will be first uploaded into Zoho Sign as a template. And then I'll have another Deluge task. First Deluge task is to upload the document. And there will be another Deluge task following this, where it will submit the request for signature to the respective recipient, that is the head of Europe region. Okay, so I'll be showing you the example of, I have a document here. I will not be actually generating a document. I have the example document in my local machine. I will upload that document, and when I submit the request, this document will get uploaded into Sign, and the notification will also go to the person who is a part of the recipient. That is, say, if it is Europe head, it is Europe head, or whoever we are mentioning, the email address that we are mentioning in that particular map data will receive an email from Sign saying it is your job to, it's your turn to sign the document. So you just need to click and get into the Sign, and you would have configured the signature. Just tick onto it, agree the conditions, and say okay, and you finish the document, the signature. So everything happens on a click, and that is actually bridged using this built-in Deluge tasks. Okay, so this is the first use case which I'm going to show you. Fine. So now let's get on to the application. So I have my application. Say I have the customer information, or let's take the candidate. Yeah, I have written the workflow in the candidate information. Say the candidate fills in the information and uploads that particular letter, which has to be attested by the Europe head or the person in charge, okay, who has to sign it. So this particular file I have as of now, to just show you as a demo, I have it as a local, I have it in my local machine. And actually we have an application here in the Europe office where we are actually processing this only using that application, right? So here, say for example, I have the candidate info. It could be anything, because it has nothing to do with the name that is there in the document, because I'm just taking it, I'm reading it from my local machine. So for example, this is how it is processed. You have your this is not mandatory field, but still, sorry. And you need to fill and say, now I'm going to upload one document. So I will just, this is that invite letter document. And this document is now, it contains all the data that has to be actually submitted as part of invite letter. And when I say submit, what happens is I've written a workflow. So I will show you exactly where it is. So I have written a workflow on success. Yesterday we have learned about the workflows, right? What operations can be performed on each and every stage. So on success, when I'm trying to create a record, I'm on success, I have written a, I'll show you the workflow. So send for authentication. There is a workflow which already I've written as send for authentication, and it's a on success scenario where I would be calling this function called request signature. So this is a custom function which I have created, and for which I'm passing the file upload field value as an argument. That means I wanted this file to get into the sign, right? So now I'll show you the custom function that has what is done within the custom function. So now we know that the custom function takes in the file that has been uploaded as an argument, and we have the first deluge task, what you see here. There is the Zoho dot, what I've already told you, whenever we want to use the deluge task, you need to actually click Zoho dot the services. The service here is sign, and the function that the action that we need to perform is create a document, create document. And the argument that it takes is just the file. So what this does is it just creates a document into the sign, right? Then I have, this will actually return me a collection as a response. So from that response, I will need the document ID, I will need the request ID. Why? Because next stage is, now that I've uploaded the document, next stage is to trigger that for signature. So for which I have another deluge task here. You can see at the bottom, which is called Zoho.sign, the same Zoho, then the service is sign, and the action is submit request. Okay. When I say submit request and pass the request ID along with the map data of information. So what does this information contain? I'm just saying add a field of type signature and set it in the position X coordinate 75, Y coordinate 680, depending upon your fixed document format. See, all this will work out if you have a fixed document format. Otherwise, it will be, you will have to actually manipulate. It's very difficult to manipulate and place the field. So if you have a template that is fixed and you just know that the values would change here and there, then you can go in with this method where you can set the X and Y coordinates, where exactly you want the signature field to be set. Okay. And then what I will be doing is the document ID, which I got, because every time you create a document in the sign, you would get a document ID as a response. So I'm just intimating through the submit request that this is the document which has to be signed by the recipient. So we have another collection where I specify who is that recipient, name of the recipient and email address of the recipient, and his type, action type is to sign. So he is the prime person who will have to do the signature. So now I will, what happens is, and I'll give it a name. Every template has a name. So I'm giving it a name as visa invite letter. So now I'm going to pass this data as one of the parameters to the submit request. So the submit request takes two parameters. One is the request ID. The second one is the collection. So now this part, or this particular submit request deluge task will trigger the document as a signature request to the recipient. Okay. So that is what is the use case. Now that I have uploaded the data here, I'm going to click submit. Fine. So let's submit it. So now in the email ID was padma.n@zohocub.com. I will actually show the mail address, whether I've received an email. So we'll see whether, can you see that there is a notification from Zoho Sign saying that there is a document that has to be signed. So you can just click on this and the document, you have to proceed to the document. And you can see the positioning of that signature field. I don't have any other to be filled fields, pre-filled fields. Okay, we call it as pre-filled fields in Sign. I don't have any other things, but if you take in reality, when we have to, in the application that I say that we are using here, we have the pre-filled fields. So in the map data that we are passing, apart from the signature field, I will also set the pre-filled field values. Okay. And you can see that the signature component, the signature field has been placed in the X and Y coordinate, which I have specified. Yeah. So now I have to agree and just continue. and I have some standard document signature that has to be done. So on click of it, the signature is given and I'm done with signing it. So now I have my document ready. So you will get a confirmation from the sign saying your document is signed up and it is ready. So it will send an attachment of the document itself, so that which can be forwarded to the particular employee. Here again, we can write another workflow. It's also possible the other way. You receive the document, you can download the document. There is a Deluge task to download the document, just passing the document ID to it. Okay. And once you download the document, you just send mail task and attach it as a document. So which still can be automated further. So this way you get the completed document and the certification for it. So you just need this document, and when you open the document, you can see that there will be a signature at the bottom. So this way you are actually automating the authorization, letter authorization. This is a simple use case. There could be use cases when you look into a real business where you have the sales processing or some kind of agreement documents that needs to be signed by the respective heads or the recipients. There you can automate it very easily using Creator and the Deluge task actually. So that is very powerful. So this is one of the built-in integrations which I wanted to show you between Zoho Creator and another Zoho product, that is the Zoho Sign. Fine. Now next we will see how we are going to integrate the Zoho Creator with one of the third-party applications. So as I told you, I have a QuickBooks account. It's just a trial account. It's taking time for signing in. Just a minute. Yeah. So we have a few records which you can see here. So I'll just go to my application and try to create another record. So the simple use case here is that whenever you try to create a customer in a Creator application, say you have a large application in which entering customer data, master data would be one such use case, right? Whenever you try to create a customer here, I want it to be synced with the QuickBooks there. On successful creation in the Creator, I want it to be pushed to the QuickBooks. So how do I achieve that? So let's first try this example out, and then I will walk you through how it has been implemented. Fine. So say, what all names we have so that I don't repeat it. Okay, let me delete, we'll make this inactive. Okay, fine, no problem. Let's create one, say Mark Smith is the name of the person, and I'm just giving some random number, 50, Lloyd Weberhoff. Then I have I need to pass two line values. So I can say, then I can say, because I've used all these fields. That's the reason why I'm entering all this, so that it doesn't go as an empty value. Yeah. And the country chosen would be Netherlands. So now I have the data filled, and I'm actually pulling these data and pushing it to QuickBooks. So on submit, this data, I have written a function. I've called the function same as in the previous case. Like in the submit of the candidate info, we have written it on success to call a built-in function, right? Which will actually do the integration. Similarly, here on success, I've written a workflow where I would have called a function inside which I would have used this built-in Deluge task, built-in integration Deluge task in order to push the data to QuickBooks. Okay, so let's see whether it is successful. So you get a logs. So this is the response returned by the QuickBooks. So let's get into the QuickBooks and see if the record has been submitted. Yeah. So yeah. Can you see the record, Mark Smith, which has been submitted now? So this is the record that we created from within. See the number 123, Lloyd Webberhoff divided. And if you want to see the details, further details and all that, you can see all the data, whatever we have given there has been moved here. So this way, we can integrate the Creator with QuickBooks. Now I'll walk you through the code. So how that has been achieved. So as I told you, I have used another built-in function, custom function, inside which I have called the built-in function. So in the custom function, I'm actually passing the map data. The map data is what? The data that I have entered in the form. So I had entered all the data that in the form that has been captured as a map data, that is a collection, and that collection has been set in the required format that the application accepts. Okay. So if you see the syntax of using this Deluge task, whenever you need to actually integrate with QuickBooks, the task that is used is intuit.quickbooks. The action is create. I'm trying to create a record. Okay, here we need to understand two important parameters. One is the connection, which I already told you. See, in the previous example, you didn't see the connection string or anything else, right? Because it is with the same credentials and it is handled at the backend. But when it comes to the third-party application, where you need to actually get the authorization to set up, establish this connection. So I will show you how to create these connection objects, a connection string, fine? So you need to actually pass the connection string, which is the first parameter. And the second one is the module, which module you wanted to perform this insert. And the third one is the company ID. If you go to QuickBooks in the settings, in accounts and settings under bill and subscriptions, you will get to know the company ID. So whenever you create an account in the QuickBooks, you'll be aware of it already. So here what you need to do is just get into the bills and subscriptions and you will have something called company ID. Just take this ID and pass this as a company ID, because company ID is a mandatory parameter that has to be passed. And the last parameter as far as the create is concerned is mandatory is what data you want to pass. So again, to understand the kind of data that you're passing, right? You need to know whether you're passing the right data to QuickBooks. You need to refer to the QuickBooks API for it. So you will know for each and every action, what are all the request parameters to be passed, which are all the mandatory parameters to be passed, and while passing, how do you need to set the key value? If there is a display name with a D capital and the N capital, you need to strictly follow that too. Okay, and they have an attribute called line 1, they have an attribute called line 2, they have an attribute called country, and that all comes under a single thing called shipping address. And the shipping address is only referred as ship ADDR. So you need to really stick on to the attribute name or the key name that you specify in the map as it is given in the API documentation. So this way we have achieved the integration of Zoho Creator with a third-party application. Right. So this is with this we are coming to an end of this session, which talks about the built-in integrations using Deluge tasks, which is pretty straightforward and simple. You just need to remember the syntax and remember the services that you're trying to use, and also refer to the respective API documents in order to know the attribute values that you're trying to pass as a parameter, request parameter. So thank you all. Right now, I think we can have a break for 20 minutes and then we can resume back to the session, or we'll continue with the next session. Okay. So, Hemant, we'll just go in for a break now for 20 minutes.
Sure, we'll break for 20 minutes and we'll continue after that.
Okay, so we can just continue with the next session. So right now I will transfer the control to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.